What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 21 of Value Town. I'm your host, ChanManV, and joining me as always is my co-host, Trump. What's up, Trump? Back from all your travels and your adventures.
Hello, hello.
So how is everything, man? Good?
I got a bit of a stomach ache, so I'm
Oh,
toughening it out for you.
oh, man. Well, I appreciate that, man. Definitely a baller, for sure. And our guest today, again, is Mr. StrifeCro here, fresh off his win from SeatStory Cup. Congrats on that, man.
Yeah, thanks. Nice to be here.
Nice to be $8,000 richer, right? Actually, Trump too. Trump actually, it's a value town. I think what netted 10,000. I think from SeatStory. Something like that.
Save money.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff, man. Good stuff. Or liquid value. I guess. Did I say value town or liquid value? Yeah, liquid value. But pretty cool. So today's show, we got some cool topics planned. We're going to talk about the official launch of Hearthstone. Kind of snuck up on me at least this week, which is really, really cool. And we'll talk about some of the changes in the patch. Of course, Pagel Tank. Of course, you guys know the changes, and we'll get these guys' perspective on it. And we'll also talk about the decks that they ran at SeatStory. Get a good look at it. Some of these decks made a lot of news because of just some really cool things that happened at the tournament. We'll get a chance to get them to, I guess, analyze, explain the decks, that sort of thing. And then at the end, we'll do the typical Q&A that we always do, where you guys get the chance to ask your questions. The ones posted in the Reddit thread, which is right here. We'll go with the top upvoted ones first and kind of work our way down from there. So be sure to get yours in there and be sure to upvote all the ones that you want to be asked on the show. So all right, guys, let's talk about the Hearthstone launch. The official launch happened 2 days ago, I believe. And, well, first off, did you guys even know it was going to get launched 2 days ago? Like, I didn't even
I didn't
know.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read it, I guess, 2 days ago, and it says Hearthstone is now live, and I didn't know. I thought this patch was just supposed to be some fixes to like Pagel and Tinkmaster.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
And then suddenly it says it's launched, so that's cool, but I think they could have made a bigger deal of it.
Yeah, I thought they were going to do like a, I don't know, like a mini party or something like that, but, like, I remember the StarCraft 2 one happening earlier last year, and it was, a super big event. And I know Hearthstone wasn't expected to be a big event, but I think at this point it's pretty clear that Hearthstone is kind of a big deal. So, yeah, I was a little surprised. Trump, what do you think? Hearthstone launched. Mean anything?
They should have put more fireworks into it.
Yeah. So maybe, I don't know, maybe when they're not going to come out with like expansions to Hearthstone, I don't think. I mean, if they do, it's going to be like a year or two from now. So maybe the next one they'll do something a lot bigger. But one thing I did see is that the mobile version, at least they showed it off at some Chinese conference or some conference in China that happened recently. It's kind of on Reddit right now. So pretty excited. Sounds like that's going to be launched fairly soon. Would you guys play on your mobile device more, or do you think you'd still be playing on PCs mostly?
Well, I play on PC mostly since I'm usually on my computer, but it's a good feature that I would definitely use as well. And I think that there's, other people, a lot of other people would probably play more on the tablets and stuff since a lot of people are more into like the mobile stuff. They're not always sitting in front of the computer like me, but.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Definitely. Another thing about the Hearthstone launch too is that I know that the Hearthstone launch was kind of I guess the first step to a lot of the new changes that they've been talking about for the last month or so. Meaning like the spectator mode and all that stuff. So what gets me excited about the launch, at least, is I know that the next step is going to be that stuff, and can't wait for that, man. Spectator mode that will make my life a lot easier with some of the other things I'm doing. So can't wait for that. So let's talk about the patch changes. So that's one of the things, obviously, part of this launch. And some of the things that we're seeing, just more aesthetic things, are the animations. You kind of see cards that have, like the totems, like this kind of ghost totem coming down on the ground, and then all of a sudden it kind of shows up. So little cool aesthetic things like that. But I think the biggest patch change everybody wants to hear about is really the Nat Pagel and Tinkmaster. So, Trump, let me get your thoughts on. Let's start with Nat Pagel. What do you think of the Nat Pagel change?
That big old change is welcomed. I think it's a fair card now. Although I am not running it in any of my decks. Time will tell on how good it is still.
Okay, how much worse do you think it is now?
It's
Like,
substantially worse.
okay.
Losing like half a card is so much value.
All right, Strife, thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. Basically, I haven't been using Nat Piggle in my decks anymore, but I think it's pretty fair now. If I guess, you could use Nat Piggle if you wanted the effect in your deck, but it's not like an auto include in every deck anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I agree with Trump what he said. Basically, it's like it's nerfed by half a card because Nat Piggle will never die on your turn since that's impossible. So whenever your opponent decides to kill it, he's going to kill it on that turn. So like pretty much Nat Piggle is just always going to draw half a card less every game. And
Okay.
I mean, if he ever dies, that is. So that's a pretty big nerf, like half a card. Like, that's pretty much worth. I don't know. That's a big change. So
So I mean, there were some suggestions of changing that Peggle to a 0-3. I think some of the community was suggesting that before this change. And I mean, I think this change is pretty cool. But do you think the 0-3 change would have been any better or worse than this current one?
well, what I think is this change is more elegant, but it's a little bit bigger nerf. The reason why I say it's more elegant is because the change right now, how it is it really further incentivizes people to be able to kill Nat Peggle with creatures. Say, you know, before if they coin out Peggle and you don't have a one drop, it's pretty hard for you to drop creatures since it's pretty risky and it takes forever. But now with it not drawing until the beginning of their turn,
Mm-hmm.
effectively you have like some more time. You have like basically like one more turn, I guess, on your turn.
Yeah.
So you don't have to deal with it right away as much. You can react a little bit slower. The 0-3 change is probably a smaller change than that Peggle. Like it'd be less of a nerf, but I think this change is more elegant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Agreed.
it's a bigger nerf as well. So I don't know.
Okay.
It is a pretty big nerf, but
Yeah, I can. Oh, go ahead, Trump. You're gonna say something?
Oh, I mean, both suggestions would be pretty big nerfs.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, I can't see it. I can maybe see it still being run in control decks, but man, anti-aggro decks, there's no way. I don't think anybody would be running Peggle in that. Even though I mean, people probably weren't even running it to begin with these days. But all right, let's talk about the Tink Master change. Trump, thoughts on that?
I I like it.
Mhm.
It's I'm glad that they also buffed it up to a 3/3. So now it's more of a it's not a funsies card, but it's sort of a funsies card, and you can actually play it in some very specific circumstances, just like the old Tink Master. Like they play one big guy, and you play your Tink Master.
does Tinkmaster have a chance of cheaping itself? Because this
No,
is
I don't think it
another
can.
this other minion. Okay,
Yeah, it can't Tink itself. I mean, it can't transform itself.
yeah.
But what's your thoughts on it, Trey?
Honestly, I'm under the impression that Tink Master is more of like a casual card, like a Timmy card,
Mm-hmm.
like not really a competitive card anymore. And that's fine. Like that kind of effect, it's a lot of people just want it removed from the competitive scene, anyways.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably just that's what they got. Like it's more of like it's kind of like a card like Goblin Mechatork. Like no one
Yeah.
really uses it in like top ladder or a competitive scene. I think that's going to be the same for Tink Master now. But it's a really fun card, and a lot of players like that stuff, and they're going to use it still. And Tink Master kind of catered to that kind of player to begin with in the first place. It's just it was so strong that even competitive players were using it as well. Um,
Do you think it was
but yeah,
originally planned to be a Funzy card?
I kind of think so, maybe, but I don't know.
That was kind of my first impression of it when I first saw it. But then, obviously quickly people figured out an applicable way of using it in competitive. So
I mean, it's a 3/3 for three, so that's not exactly bad, like just straight up. But again, that's not really good enough. Just have a 3/3 for three, and I don't know. It's pretty hard to reliably get anything because you can't even
Well,
target it.
yeah,
So
yeah. Take Master was never. I mean, it was situational for sure, but you never played it in a situation where it would, voluntarily, unless you were just completely desperate, put you in a worse situation.
yeah,
And in this
exactly.
case, I mean, especially converting your own minion, right? You would never convert your own, like your 3/3 and try to convert it, with their Tank Master. That would never happen, right? But in this particular case, I mean, you can have very, very bad things happen to you. So, yeah, I think it's completely, like, not
Well,
viable
if you
anymore.
do go for the old strat of
Mm.
how some people play Dink Master, which is only play it when it's like really, say on Ragnaros or in really good situations where even the downside of it would still be all right,
Mm-hmm.
then a lot. I think at this point you just never play Dink Master the whole game, most of the game.
Yeah,
So you know what I mean? Like you can't really do that strategy anymore. You gotta hope now
yeah.
because it's just too specific that if you only wait for like the perfect situations, you're pretty much it's never going to happen anymore. I think so.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the decks that might be really, like, greatly affected by it, that was in the meta, maybe a few days ago before the patch. Trump, what decks, in your opinion, do you think will be highly, highly affected by it? Because some classes don't have any kind of, you know um, transformation type of spells like Hex and Polymorph, right? And I think Tink has kind of been a filler for those classes. So what are your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, every single. It turns out that I believe every single deck I brought to the SeatStory tournament had both cards in it, Tinkmaster and that
Okay,
Pagel.
okay,
So it affects all of my decks. It affects those with limited removal the most. For example, the Druid for StrifeCro.
yeah, yeah, definitely. There's no single card that will probably function the same, right? I mean, will people run naturalized now? I mean, that sort of thing.
No, I doubt that that effect is that important to begin with.
Oh, okay, okay,
I mean, you don't have to have even if there's no Tinker Master. I doubt people will run naturalized. So.
yeah. I guess another class too I can think of is maybe Paladin. I mean, Paladin doesn't have wonderful removal either. So it'll be interesting to see. But it's probably going to take at least several card rework, right, to kind of, I think, make up for that. Or do you think it's not that big a deal to these decks?
I don't think
I think
that's
it's
that
sort of a
big
big
of a
deal.
deal. Huh.
Hmm. Okay. So Trump.
There's a lot of
Explain
cards that just went up in goodness, like Tyrion and
Mm-hmm.
Karen and
Oh my god.
Sylvanas,
Yeah. So
and
Sylvanas gonna be back. Oh my god. Yeah.
yeah, and Deathwing.
Ah, yes, Deathwing. Maybe we'll see some big game hunter back in the meta too. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind
Maybe.
of like a replacement on some creatures if you really need that effect.
Yeah.
It's a much better replacement against like Rag than say Naturalizes. That's for sure.
Yeah. Just throwing out naturalize, given that it was a druid card, but yeah, naturalize is, I think, never been great value card. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Any other? There really were no other updates, right? Just to the cards themselves.
No, those were the only balance changes.
Yeah, I still see a few bugs, I have to say, which I haven't seen the stacking bug at all. Have you guys run into the stacking bug, the card stacking bug?
Oh, I personally haven't seen it.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that one, but still the floating things still happen from time to time. So um, hopefully those will be hashed out soon. But man, that card stacking thing at least is gone. I haven't seen the swapping too, just like the Argus swapping, that kind of thing. So I think those are all good, and yeah, can't wait to see some more competitive matches without Tink and Pagel now. But let's move on. Let's talk about both of your decks at SeatStory. Obviously, both you guys finished first and third at the event, and had some wonderful success and some great matches. I really enjoyed watching. I watched quite a bit of it actually, and figured it'd be great to talk about these decks with you. So, I'm going to start out with Strife's decks, and kind of have all four of them here. And what's funny is, for those of you who didn't watch SeatStory, each of the players had four decks that they brought to the tournament, and they had this concept of a secret deck that they could, obviously keep secret, so none of the players knew what they were, and they could break it out during, I think, one match the entire tournament, or one just at some point in the entire tournament. They can only do it one time, and if you, as you can see here, Strife only has 4 decks listed here. So what does that mean, Strife? Like, where's your secret deck?
Well, my secret deck was my Druid deck, except
It's Druid deck
I
times 2.
just played it twice. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were allowed to do that. You were allowed to literally pick any deck you wanted, and just have that be the additional deck you could run. So, Strife picked his Druid deck twice, man. That's confidence.
It might
right
have been
there.
good to pick like another Warlock because you know how Murloc and Giants play so differently, and people mulligan
Yeah,
against it differently. So that's what Nimsh did, and I think that was really smart as well.
yeah, that's cool. So yeah, let's talk about some of these decks then. We've talked about the Druid and the Shaman deck, I think, in past episodes. Unless you changed it, did you change it up at all? Oh,
Yes.
actually,
Well,
yeah, it's actually pretty different than the ones that you had before. So,
yeah.
the Druid deck, I think the only oh wow, the Druid deck's actually quite different too, with the Argents and the Black Knight at the end, and then no Rag. So yeah, let's go ahead. Let's just talk about them all. So let's start out with the Druid deck. Talk to me about some of the changes you made there. One less
Okay.
defender.
Well,
Yeah.
I didn't make. I just copied all my decks in this tournament from Reddit from Ghosted Clip. That one, that Ignite one. I copied all his decks
All right.
because before the tournament I didn't really play much Hearthstone in 2 weeks. So I was a little bit busy and I wasn't too confident in like making all 4 decks as well as I thought maybe the meta would change or the decks would get better
Mm-hmm.
while I haven't played much in 2 weeks. So I saw that this is an open tournament. Like I think that open tournaments are like some of the most brutal experiences. Like it's very hard to do good in open tournaments because of just the amount of players there are. And also, I saw that he was actually consistently placing very high in open tournaments. So I thought that that took a very good deck list and really good
Mm-hmm.
play as well. So I was pretty, and I actually looked over the decks that I copied, and I kind of agreed with how they're all made and like how how I guess they were progressing from the metagame. So I just took them all, put Pagel in like 3 of them because Pagel was banned that tournament, and then just played it.
Okay. Compare the Druid one to your previous one, because it's one less Argus. I see a Drake there now, and 2 Argents. I mean, the Argents I think are the biggest change from what you had.
Yeah, well, it's really aggressive. It has, I guess, 1 Drake instead of 2, and also has Argent Commander as well, and no card above 7 mana, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's pretty good, especially with how I like to play. I like to like go for the face a lot. Even if I have like say a Yeti versus like a 2/3, a lot of times I just won't trade and hit him in the face.
Mm,
It
okay.
really pressures life heavily, I guess. Um, Oh yeah, the one change I really liked was how it was only using 1 Argus, which is kind of weird for a Watcher deck, but like our Ancient Watcher in this deck is kind of more used for a beatdown role, I guess, a lot of times. Like
Yeah.
say instead of Defender Argusing it, you have just 2 keepers as well, so you're more playing a stance and hit him for 4 as well. So
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. Trump, any thoughts on his Druid deck?
Yeah, part of the thing that I've been looking into Druid is whether or not you need the 6 Ancient Watcher activations, and I've toyed with removing one defender also. I wasn't brave enough to make that shot though in my deck.
You have an Earthen too in there.
yeah, well, like I said, I literally copied it on blind faith, and I didn't want to make people that make the decks have a good reason why, and I don't unless I play them a lot, I'm not confident in making like changes to the decks I copy from people.
Yeah.
So I just took it on faith on the earthen, but I think it worked out fine, and especially with only 1 defender of Argus,
Yeah.
maybe you can have like another earthen as well. And earthen's a card where I've had in Druid for a long time. It's just I've never had it in a Watcher deck,
Mm-hmm.
but if you do take out some of the 6 Watcher activators, then you can fit in some other stuff like earthen.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. I mean, you do bring up a something, or just a general thing that happens in these card games where deck building and actual deck playing is like are 2 separate things, right? And sometimes kind of comes together, and you kind of do both. But again, like I think if you haven't gotten a chance to play and practice a lot with
Yeah,
trying to
exactly.
make
Like you
tweaks,
certainly
then
don't have to make your own decks. You can certainly copy decks
yeah,
from people as well. And
it
I
happens
mean,
all the time.
that's generally a better idea, honestly, because because the because it's likely that the people that worked on the other decks might have a little bit more experience. So
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's move on to the Shaman deck, and this one's interesting. It's got one Yeti in it. It's got a Pyromancer in it. I mean, it's got a lot of. Well, it's got some singletons in it, and pretty different than the one that you had before. So, talk to us about this. What do you think the strengths were with this compared to maybe some of the other Shaman decks that are being run with Alkir and that sort of thing?
I think it's pretty consistent. Like it has. I like how it has a 4-drop. Like it has a Yeti, or you can like a straight 4-drop, not like a art, not just a Defender of
Mm-hmm.
Argus. So you actually sometimes have a strong 4 mana play. But other than that, yeah, it has like no Wind Fury. You only have one Gadgetzan, which is kind of cool because those cards are like really combo heavy, and it's really basically skimping on like combo potential for consistency, basically.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the style here. Like it's just very it's really like standard shaman, I guess. If I had
Yeah,
to,
it's kind of a shaman that you would have seen probably, I don't know, 4 months ago, 3 months ago, is that type of thing? But you don't think so, Trump?
I don't know if you would have
It's
saw
generally
like
the same-ish. I
this.
wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's got like probably about 20 plus on a glance shaman cards in it, so it's
Yeah.
about standard.
Okay. All right. So let's move on. We can talk about the warrior deck, and I believe the warrior deck. Oh no, I think you guys have a few cards that are different in both of your warrior decks. But talk about this deck. I've played decks really similar to this quite a bit, but want to get your thoughts on strengths, that sort of thing. Strife.
Well, I think it's just a pretty standard warrior control deck, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of wanted to tune it a little bit against aggro, say Hunter and Warlock aggro. So I think I would cleave in it. Oh, like my original plan was for Warrior to be a really good counter to like those aggro decks, and I was even thinking of removing some amount of executes so that it'd have a better matchup against those. But
Mm-hmm.
I decided just to still keep the 2 executes and try to try to make it as good as possible still against aggro. I don't know if it worked out. I guess it kind of worked out, but yeah, I doesn't really have. I guess it doesn't have Karn in this deck, and I guess I don't have Baron Geddon. I don't know if that's good or bad, because, like I said, I just copy the deck. But I guess that's what it was going for. I mean, it has 2 Yetis, so it's a little bit faster.
Yeah, the two Yetis are definitely the kind of the nuance. There's some that have the Yetis, some that don't. Another card too is Onyxia, and I was seeing. I think Monk ran Onyxia too, right? So talk to me about Onyxia, and what
Yeah,
do you
Monk
think?
was talking to me about it. He basically just said he tested a lot of Warrior, and it won him some games where he wouldn't have won with, Ysir or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just put it in. Um, I don't know how. I guess I never really got to play it, but so I don't really know how
You won
it
games before you even had to play it, man. That's
would, or
nice.
a loss with it before I had to play.
Trump, what are your thoughts on Onyxia?
My thoughts are that it's a pretty good card. I actually thought you had to run either Ysera or Onyxia, but apparently Strife went and ran both, which is really good in the late game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because there's no
definitely.
Alex Rouse in this deck for some reason.
Oh, that's right. No,
Yeah,
Alex.
yeah. I think
So
you
it's
you
just
run
more
Alex for the
consistent.
Trump, I believe, right? So,
Right.
Alex seems. Yeah, I mean, any thoughts on that, Strife? I mean, can you
I guess it's a
can you
little bit more
imagine?
aggressive with the
Okay.
Yetis and stuff like that. So you're more likely to do damage early. Like Alex Cross is really good if in a situation where you're never doing damage early, so that you can always get the 15 damage on them when you do it.
Okay. Yeah.
Like because Alex Cross effectively makes any early damage you do useless, pretty much. So with this deck, as you add in like more Yetis, I guess it's not as important. But I don't know exactly why there's no Alex Cross in this deck. I don't know what the original creator of this deck thought when he was making it, so I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it. And I don't really think that Alex Strauss is like you have to have it in Warrior. I mean, the effect is really strong, but it's
I
mostly
like that reasoning
strong.
a lot.
It's mostly strong when you get the 15 damage. So.
Yeah, it just seems really again if minus the Yetis, it just seems like most of the warrior stuff is about removal or building up
Mhm.
armor. I mean, you have
Yeah,
really
Frolics
weak.
as well. So
Yeah, Frotlings can scale for sure, but armor smiths and things like that are definitely not going to be doing a ton of damage. So it's
no.
nice to have the Alex Strauss at 15 there. Okay, let's move on to the Warlock deck, and looks like pretty much your standard handlock here. I'm trying to see if there's anything that stands out that's different. I mean, the extra Shadow Flame,
Yeah,
but that's a
it's
lot of people have
pretty
been doing that
standard.
recently.
I think that's actually more standard than not that
Yeah,
too. Like it's more normal. Yeah, I mean,
very true.
I kind of wanted to play Handlock, just because I thought that a lot of decks have a pretty bad matchup against it, especially decks like the Zoo deck
Yeah.
where they're they're pretty much like designed to be really strong against control decks that are trying to remove all their creatures like warriors and maybe even druid and stuff. But against control decks that are trying to just do their own thing,
Mhm.
like do something stronger like a handlock where you don't really care about removing their creatures. It's more about you want to just make gigantic creatures of your own and take over the game with like that taunting them or something.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
it has a really good matchup against that. And also some of my control decks are having or slower decks are also having a hard time against handlock. So I just wanted to run it because I thought that a lot of people would be playing the same decks. Stuff like I think Warrior Control and maybe even Druid. Like I don't think they have great matchups against handlock either. So
Yeah.
the biggest
Agreed.
weakness of handlock is Hunter, and it has. I think it's not very good against Hunter, but yeah.
Okay. Any comments, Trump, on handlock? I mean, again, it's pretty much the standard one. Or any ideas that you have for handlock that you've been thinking about?
I think it was well said, and I think Handlock was a excellent choice to bring into the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I think interesting enough, I don't think I ever lost a game with handlock the full tournament. I think I went 5-0.
Nice.
I think that was actually
Nice.
my best deck.
Now we're just gonna see everybody running handlock today on the ladder
Well, it's,
after hearing that. But okay, let's take a look at
It's
let's look at
even
Trump's.
better now that Pink Master is
I
nerfed.
know, right? That's
yeah, yeah.
huge, actually. So I'm sure we'll be seeing more giant decks in general, not even just
But
handlock.
if everyone decides that BGH is what they're replacing
That's what's gonna
with,
happen. That's what's gonna happen, man.
then that's not good.
It's funny how the meta's been moving, and I mean, Black Knight too, right? Black Knight's been gone for a while, and I've been
Uh,
starting to run it too this season some more again, and it's like effective, especially with like handlock and those kind of things. Not so much against Zoo and aggro and that kind of stuff, but
uh,
it might start to come back some more too.
it helps the matchup Druid versus handlock a lot since they always taunt their giants or that Twilight Drake like a
Mhm.
4/10, and you have to spend so much to get through. Black Knight kind of really punishes them for it.
Yeah, very very true. Okay, Trump, your decks. And Trump has 5 decks, so his secret deck obviously was not a repeat of any of the others. So which one was your secret deck, Trump, for those of you that didn't watch the SeatStory Cup?
Well, the secret deck is the Mage deck.
Yes, the infamous Mage deck. The Hungry Crab Mage deck, which we'll get to, I guess, last year. But well, first off, Trump, what did you think of the format? Did you like the whole secret deck? I didn't really get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, of course I like the format. Let me run Angry Crab in a deck.
No, it's cool.
Uh,
It's cool. It's pretty creative, and I hope more events do, neat little twists like that, to allow you to, I don't know, just allow people to do kind of cool, funny, entertaining things like that too. Even though they're effective, they're entertaining yet they're still effective, which is awesome. All right, so let's get into your rogue deck. Want to talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, sure. Rogue wasn't run too much in the tournament.
Mhm.
Monk and I think we're the two that ran it.
Savages ran a Miracle Rogue
Yeah,
as
Savage Rune
his
Miracle.
secret, but not the type of rogues you guys ran, which is like a
Core
mid-range
control.
rogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My reasoning for running Rogue, and this hadn't been a deck that I had practiced too much, but I practiced it like for a few days just before the tournament started,
Okay.
is because I needed something that would beat Shaman, and I figured a lot of people would run Shaman. So, as it turns out, a lot of the Doggy House people thought that Shaman beats Rogue, but Thankfully, through bouncing some ideas off of Liquid Value, I was convinced that Rogue had a very favorable matchup against Shaman, and it
Yeah,
turned out it was pretty good.
Yeah,
I
explain
think it
that.
was 0%.
Yeah,
I don't think Sean ever won against Rogue.
explain the logic that this particular rogue deck has an advantage over Shaman.
Boy, it's really hard to actually explain.
I know, right?
It's similar to the same reason why aggro decks tend to be good against Shaman. It beats them down really fast. The totems can be dealt with fairly easily.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the Loot Hoarder. It's all right. Like they've got Earthshock, but for the most part, if they don't have Earthshock, it's really good. They can't do 1 damage to it.
What about Argent
And then
Squire? Argent Squire.
oh,
in the
Ardent
beginning.
Spire is really good in this deck.
Okay.
Might be the best card just because of the Cold Blood.
Okay. Cool.
As it turns out, it's hard to explain why it's good against Shaman, or perhaps I just don't have the experience to explain why. But it keeps up the pressure and manages to clear their board, and that's important against Shaman since they tend to need to have a bunch of totems out and then buff their stuff. If you manage to keep their stuff clean, which the Rogue manages to do very early, then you're in a good spot.
Yeah, I can see this deck just every turn basically putting pressure on the board, while the Shaman will have to respond with Overload at some point, right? And then I think they would kind of get a little bit behind and maybe try to keep up and that sort of thing. I actually, Strife, what do you think? Why do you think the Rogue is probably better in this situation?
Well, I think that Rogue, I mean, basically some of the worst games I've ever had as Shaman versus anything is when a Rogue coined out Scrubs and I just couldn't kill it. But again, this deck doesn't have Scrubs, but it's the same concept. Basically, the Shaman playstyle is a playstyle of like having early game is like tons of removal plus like they don't really have a lot of creatures to drop. They just have like their low mana stuff like Lightning Bolt and Stormforge Axe or Shock.
Yep.
They're all like removal, and then if the other guy doesn't have anything to remove, they just make totems. The rogue creatures that this deck uses are all really like sticky, and it's not really efficient to remove. And honestly, it's not efficient for Shaman to remove almost any creature. It's just the fact that they usually have enough. But stuff like Squire, Harvest Golem, I don't know if it
Yeah.
has it. Loot Hoarder, like you can't really remove them easily, or you generally can't remove them easily. Like you have to spend a spell to, maybe even 2 spells for a lot of them to kill them. Or in the Loot Hoarder's case, maybe 1 card, but they're gonna draw a card on you. Also, the fact that their hero power is so good against yours a lot of times to take out, like it's one of the only hero powers that can kind of keep up with Shaman hero power, like Mage, for example, or Druid. Most of the times you make 0/2 totems, they're not going to kill it, but the Rogue one, it kind of like saves over 2 turns, so you can actually take out like taunt totems or
I see.
or
Right.
or the other totem. Since the Rogue hero power, the weakness is usually the other. Like the weakness, even though it does 2 damage, is that you take twice the amount of damage. Like
Yeah.
you know what I mean. Whereas the Mage one doesn't take any damage. But since the totems don't fight back anyways, they're like 0/2 or 1/1. That's not a big deal.
Gotcha.
And also Rogue just has efficient removal as well. And this kind of Rogue where you're just progressing into the 4 to 6 mana cards with like really mid-rangey creatures is a really good style. Like Shaman can beat some of the really aggro decks that rely on just like swarming the board, and then they die to like Lightning Storm or Pyromancer or anything. It's just the Rogue isn't really swarming the board. It's more like making like a couple of really sticky minions, and then transitioning into the mid game as well, like
Yeah.
so around the same power Shaman. So they're usually ahead from the beginning, and the Shaman can't really catch up, and they're not
Okay.
all in like some of the other aggro decks.
Yeah. 2 particular cards, Trump, I wanted to ask you about in this is King Mukla and Captain Greenskin. 2 cards I think are really really fun. Mukla can be situational at times, but talk to me how Mukla actually works in this deck, where sometimes a lot of decks it doesn't work in.
Sure, I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
So King Mukla is a decision to make the rogue better against control. It really sucks against aggro, and oftentimes against aggro matchups, I had to hold the King Mukla in my hand in the late game. But when you're up against control and you're constantly clearing their stuff and you have a lead, then there's no better way to punish them than having a 3-mana 5/5. As for Captain Greenskin, I just think it's really valuable, and I would consider running it in every rogue deck. It's sort of fits the role of a third Azure Drake, and rogues really need the extra value, so to say. So it's sort of like a 5/4 Azure Drake plus you immediately draw and play upgrade, and you always have a weapon, almost always.
Yeah.
So I think it's great.
Yeah, especially deadly poisoned too. I mean, you could definitely get another swing with a deadly poisoned weapon, which would be great. Yeah, Captain Greenskin I've tried in the warrior deck too. I think it's actually a pretty cool card, and value wise is great, like you were saying. So I wouldn't be surprised to start seeing it some more. So it's really cool to see you run it actually in a rogue deck. That was cool. Let's see, any other cards here we're talking about?
I'll mention that there's a reason why Leroy isn't here. It's
Okay.
more of a value deck as opposed to a rushdown deck. Like even the Cold Blood can usually just be done as 4 damage if you have a minion on the board.
Yeah.
So a lot of the mentality is having a lot of value cards like Captain Greenskin, Azure Drake, Cairn,
Yeah.
etc.
Okay, cool. Your shaman deck, it actually looks kind of like, well, maybe there's like maybe 3 cards or 4 cards different than Strife's. I think Strife, you had a pyromancer in yours, I believe.
Yeah,
Is that right? Yeah, that was kind of interesting. But you have the Gadgetzan in this one too, Trump, and looks like you have Alkir, but he didn't. I think yours topped up at 6, right, Strife? With the fire elementals. So pretty close, but how would you describe the style of this one, Trump?
This deck is tilted more towards anti-control, whereas Strife's is a bit more anti-aggro. The big changes are this has an extra Flame Tongue totem instead of Pyromancer. It doesn't have a Yeti, and it doesn't have a second Defender of Argus. And instead, it has Alec here, and what is that final card which is different? I'm not entirely sure, but one other card.
I think there's one less Drake. You might have had one less Drake, Strife. Was it a singleton? I can look. Hold on. Let me just...
He had 2 Drakes also.
Oh yeah, he had 2 Drakes.
And also he had a Lava Burst.
Oh, he had one Yeti. He had one Yeti too.
Right. So there's like 4 to 5 cards, and that actually makes a big difference because this is a lot better against. I would argue it's a lot better against control, and I would definitely see StrifeCro as much better against aggro.
Okay.
And that's just a deck building decision.
Right. Okay, great. Let's see. Moving on to the Druid deck. This is pretty much what the StrifeCro Druid deck was that everybody knows. I guess there's a Drake in there. I don't remember there being a Drake in there for. I'm trying to see which card it was. What's the Drake?
Yeah, I'll
in there
actually
for?
just credit StrifeCro for this deck.
Yeah.
I went to his stream, and I looked at his Druid list. I was like, yes, same as
Alright.
always. Looks good.
All right. There you go.
And it's something I've practiced a lot. It's a very solid control style. I like it a lot.
Yeah, I think everybody would agree with you there. It's just one of the most solid decks we have in the metagame, and has been for a while now. Okay, Trump's Warrior deck, and we mentioned your Warrior deck and maybe a little bit of the differences before, but getting a chance to look at it now, it looks like, we talked about Alexstrasza being different, and you have Baron Geddon too. So talk to us a little bit about Baron Geddon and why it's so great.
Sure. My Warrior deck is a bit less anti-aggro than StrifeCro's, even though I tried to make it a bit anti-aggro. So it doesn't have Ysera or Nixie in it, and instead it has Alexstrasza. And one of the dragon cuts was for Arathi Weaponsmith, which is good against aggro. It's also got a Baron Geddon, which I feel like is essential. It's really, really good against classes such as Shaman, who have a lot of stuff.
Yeah, can remove most of the totems only have 2. I mean,
Yep.
you can remove every single totem basically too with it. It's nice.
I actually believe I got eliminated from the tournament because of Baron Geddon. Pretty rough.
Really? I don't remember that.
Yeah.
When was that? Like, what happened particularly?
So I was playing Shaman against Warrior, which I believe is a good matchup.
Yeah.
And I deduced that he did not have Baron Geddon or Brawl. So I put a lot of stuff on the board. And then Nimsh played Baron Geddon.
Yeah, that was a really good deduction. because the move he made before, like there's no way he would have made that if he had a brawler again. So and then Trump loaded up the board to
Oh, I remember
pressure him,
that. I
and
remember
then
that
he
move.
top decked again, and then
Oh, he top decked twice in the row in that game, or maybe with offset by a turn. I remember that. Yeah, he top decked that Baron get in when you had. Yeah, okay, I remember that. Yeah, that's kind of cool to have brawl and get in a lot of times too against aggro. They're like stoppers. You kind of have two of them that are mid game that just put an end to it. So it's really really cool. Wrathy Weaponsmith. So what do you think of Wrathy Weaponsmith, StrifeCro?
I think they're pretty good. I don't know if it's better than Yeti, like in that order deck, but I mean it's really close. I guess it's kind of better than Yeti against aggro, probably, and
Yeah.
worse against Yeti against like other like really slow control decks, like say Handlock. I think Yeti's better than that.
Yeah.
And I guess that's one of the reasons why I picked Handlock against, I think it was Monk when he showed the O'Reilly Weaponsmith in his warrior deck. I decided to pick Handlock against it because I thought it was really weak against like giants, whereas Yeti would be stronger and he had the Weaponsmith. But I mean I think it's a really reasonable choice as well for 4 drop slot.
What do you guys think of two brawls in a deck, especially now that Pagel and Tank are probably questionable in this deck? Just kind of one of the potential cards. What do you think of two brawls in a deck?
Uh, I don't know. I think 2 rolls a lot, especially with that effect being like it's almost you almost never have a game where you actually want to cast 2 brawls. It's more like you just want to draw it more consistently, maybe. But
Mm-hmm.
still, I don't know. I don't think it's that great, but it can certainly surprise some people. I think it might be better as a surprise than as a general thing, like to
I
create
see.
a strong deck. Because
Trump,
generally, when you brawl once, they don't expect another one. So
Trump, what do you
Yeah, I
think?
pretty much agree with that. I
Okay.
think two brawl might be good in a tournament situation, but probably not as good if you're trying to just go up against the general ladder decks because the second brawl could be dead.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the mage deck, which is like I guess one that everybody wants to hear a little bit about. So this obviously made some memorable moments, or at least the one big memorable moment at the tournament when he broke it out against Artosis. So talk to us about the mage deck, and I guess why you decided to put Hungry Crab in it particularly, and I guess the rest of it too.
Okay, so this mage deck requires a bit of explanation about the tournament format.
Yeah.
Like it's been said earlier, but I'll just mention it again. It's you have one secret deck which can be played once in a tournament, and with the 8 players on that list, I figured that one of them would play Murlocs, at least one. Turns out that I believe 3 of them, if not 4 of them, are playing it. So I was thinking that I would run this deck to hard counter Murlocs and get something like the highest win percentage you could possibly get against Murlocs, which is I'm going to estimate it at 80+%, because it's got some unfair cards in it, such as Argent Squire, which will trade for 2 Murlocs potentially. The Arcane Missiles will potentially trade for 2 Murlocs. It's got a lot of early game, so you stop the bleeding early. And of course, the cherry on top is the Hungry Crab, which if you play it against the Murloc deck, you win.
So did all right. I'm just gonna ask you straight up. Did Entertainment Factor play any involvement in putting Hungry Crowd in there?
No, I just wanted to win.
Okay.
So
All right.
although it might have played some,
The show.
I mean,
The
I came
showman
up
Trump.
with the idea and it was really cool, and I was like, wait, should I really do this? Maybe I should just duplicate another one of my good decks. But I was like, wait, but I want to play Mage because that's like my sort of my trademark deck, and I also want to play Hungry Crab, the hard counter. So
The
there
showman.
is, I guess there's a little bit
Worth
of maybe
it. Worth it.
subconscious showmanship.
Yeah.
it's worth it.
No, it was great, man.
Worth
It's amazing. It was definitely awesome. Talk to us about Amani Berserker.
Sure, Amani Berserker is just a good card in Mage because it can either be played as a 2 mana 2/3 or a 4 mana 5/2, and it's good to have that flexibility. Or you can play it as a 2 mana 2/3, and then later on turn 3, Fire Blast it, and then it trades with a Yeti, which is really good value.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because you obviously beat Artosis's the Murloc deck, but it actually was pretty close to winning the next match too. So this deck actually has some additional resilience besides just being a completely anti-Murloc / maybe even anti-aggro deck.
Right. You can sort of tell by the cards that it's not just designed to win only against Murlocs because it has cards that cost 5+ in it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so I figured it would have about an 80% win rate against Murlocs and then maybe a 40% win rate against any other deck.
The card draw. How's the card draw in this deck? Because without Pagel, does this deck still work decently?
The good news is Mage is one of the classes that benefits most from Pagel being gone because it has repeatable card draw in Acolyte of Pain.
Okay. Good point. Good point. Very, very cool. Any comments on this, Strife?
I think it's
What is
cool.
that, man? What is that laugh?
Yeah, I mean, I think it did its job. So that's what you want.
Well, generally speaking, having a the sacred deck be a pure counter is. You think that's the best strategy?
Yeah, kind of actually. Because a secret deck, you don't actually have to play in every matchup. If your secret deck can get like a very, very high win percentage against a deck that you can choose when you're playing it against, then it'll pretty much at least win one. The only thing I kind of feel is that I think the win percentage with this deck against other decks might be a fair bit lower than 40%, which might be the problem. But if you actually could get like 80% win rate against a deck that you're putting against and maintain like a 40%, then I think it'd be a really good strategy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you also have the situation where it's like, maybe you're just in the last game and there are no other games, right? And you can just break this out and that's game over, right?
Yeah, that's true as well.
Yeah. Just really, really cool. All right, well, whatever it was definitely, I think, the highlight of the tournament for me when I was watching it. I think I was laughing out loud for sure. I was wanting to message you, but I knew I couldn't get a hold of you, you Trump. But it was a pretty amazing moment, I think, for everybody watching. All right, guys. Well, why don't we take a quick break and then we will do some Q&A with you guys, and we'll be right back.